Yo, what is going on, everybody? You have Tone here, and I am back bringing you guys the my draft recap for season number 7 of the CPC, the Continental Pokemon Championship. And this time, though, as you can tell by the layout in front of you, I'm not using the main Red Claws or the Miami Malin Marlins. No, I'm using a third team for this particular league. No real reason behind using this new team name. I'm pretty sure that someone, I think there's at least one person out there who has this team name, the Cleveland Indiancies, but it just popped into my head and I was like, you know what, I'm going to try to run with this team name, go from there. Not saying that the other two team names are bad, but just something a little bit different in terms of just something entirely new from my perspective. Nothing more to say about that. So yeah. So in terms of this draft, or in terms of the league in general, so I feel like I have my work cut out for me in terms of this league, only for the fact that this team has a lot of exceptional battlers and a few people in which I know in this league. And yeah, drafting a team that I really felt comfortable using or just trying to get the hang of was kind of difficult, especially considering I pretty much went into this with no draft plan whatsoever. So you'll see what I'm talking about as I go through my picks. There are some old allies on this team, I'm not gonna lie. You'll see some very obvious ones when I get there. But all in all, I just feel like trying to be competitive, but at the same time try to have some fun, be a little bit more loose. It's still pretty competitive as far as I'm concerned, but that's enough rambling. I've gone on for about 2 minutes now, so let's just jump right into my draft for this league. So the idea with this draft is it's a points draft. Each team is given 120 points to draft between 9 and 12 Pokemon. And then at the end, you pick at least two Pokemon to be your Z-Mons, and so we'll go from there. So, in terms of my draft, like I said, I didn't go into this draft with a thought process. Especially, it doesn't really help considering the fact that I was like in the middle. I was 8th in terms of drafting, and when you're in the middle of a draft, you can't really focus more on the fact that you're trying to get some sort of core going, because when you're in the middle, you're not going to get the mons you want. There's always going to be that one time where you finally have something going for you and then you get sniped. So I had to adjust a little bit in terms of this draft, but at the same time, I wanted my round 1 pick at the very least to be something I felt comfortable bringing on a weekly basis. So with my first round pick, number 8 overall, it's not really good. Well, it's a good Pokemon, but it's kind of going a little bit high, but it's the one I felt comfortable with, and that Pokemon is, of course, Garchomp. So I've used Garchomp quite a bit more recently in the PTL. I'm very familiar with how it functions as an offensive Stealth Rocker, Choice Scarfer, Sword Stance user, and it is a very solid Z-move user in general. And on top of that, you just can't go wrong with pretty solid stats across the board, getting that solid Dragon Ground coverage, giving me a good electric check, giving me a fire check, all that sort of stuff. So having something versatile like Garchomp round 1 is very, very nice, if only for the fact that I'm not stuck bringing a specific set or anything of the sort in that regard. So maybe a bit early to get Garchomp, but as a round 1 pick, but at the same time, like I said, can't go wrong with it. In my mind, I was taking the best available Pokemon that I felt comfortable using, and Garchomp was the one Pokemon that fit the bill. Now, if you want to talk about a Pokemon I really feel comfortable using, look no further than round 2, and wouldn't you know, surprise, surprise, look who I got round number 2. Surprises no one, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, if you know me, you know how much I absolutely love Ferrothorn in Draft League format. You cannot go wrong with the utility that Ferrothorn can provide with a team, being a Stealth Rocker, a Spiker, just overall, the utility just goes on and on. Like I said, a Stealth Rocker and a Spiker all in one can also give you other utility options, Leech Seed, Thunder Wave, knockoff, stuff like that. It's not a one-trick pony. It can be a bit passive at times, but given the right team support, Ferrothorn can function well under any team if given the right support. And Ferrothorn to me just it's like peanut butter and jelly. You just can't have one without the other. But in any case, like I said, I'm just like I said, just trying to have some a good time with this draft, if anything, and getting something I'm comfortable with. You look no further than Ferrothorn. I mean, Ferrothorn never let me down, and I'm pretty positive it won't let me down here. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for Ferrothorn. It's very solid. Complements Garchomp very, very nicely in terms of giving me a fairy check and all that stuff. So, and somewhat of a nice check, quote unquote. But that's pretty much all I have to say about Ferrothorn. It's a very solid utility mon in general. So now moving on to round number 3. My round 3 pick, I didn't really know what I wanted, but at the very least, I wanted something that can that pretty much can go well with what I have so far and appreciates the hazard support that I currently have here with this draft. So round 3, I ended up picking up Thunder Asterion, and as you've guys seen in my most recent videos, I've been using Thunder Asterion in the IBL, not as well as I'd hope, but that's a different story altogether. But Thunder Asterion is just a very, very nice mon in terms of the fact that it appreciates the Stealth Rock support from Garchomp or Ferrothorn. Stealth Rock plus Spikes is great, especially for a potential setup sweeper with Nasty Plot and Agility. Or Agility 3 attacks, Nasty Plot 3 attacks. Like, you just can't go wrong with how much of an offensive threat Thunder Asterion can be, and if my opponent isn't prepped well enough for Thunder Asterion, then they can actually put in a bunch of work if the situation does arise. It also gives me another good option in terms of speed, dealing with like outspeeding base 100, so that's really, really nice to complement Garchomp as well. So that is pretty much all I want to say about Thundurus. I'm going to try to keep this as minuscule as I possibly can. Not going to try to make this draft recap any longer than it should be. So moving on to round 4, the main thing I really wanted to get at this point was to try to patch up a few weaknesses. And the first one I really wanted to go after was trying to pick up a decent fighting resist and a potential another hazard setter all in one. So round 4, ended up picking up Necrozma here. I've used Necrozma once in the past, back in PPL Season 6, and Necrozma did do a lot of work for me, especially considering the fact that with Necrozma getting access to move tutor moves, getting access to stuff like Heat Wave, mainly Heat Wave and other good utility options, but the main thing is Photon Geyser, just being able to complement with either Sword Stance or Calm Mind, so it's not just limited to being just one set. It's a very bulky setup mon. It can be a Stealth Rocker, so I already have 3 Stealth Rockers in this team. Very, very nice. They can be a Rock Polish or Autotomize, whichever one you prefer. I already talked about Sword Stance and Calm Mind, so it's a potential sweeper in and of itself. So overall, this just gives me a very, very versatile mon at round 4, which I feel very comfortable trying out. Getting accustomed to again, and Prism Arbor just being a fantastic ability, weakening those super effective hits. Same thing with Thunder Asterian's Voltazor, Ferrothorn's Iron Barbs, and Garchomp's Rough Skin. But Necrozma's Prism Armor is just nice for weakening those super effective hits, making it more of a threat. And on top of that, getting access to Recovery in Moonlight or Morning Sun, whichever you prefer, is also very nice indeed. So moving on into round number 5 here, I really wanted to try to pick up my fairy type. All the good fairies were going left and right, and there was one fairy type in particular I wanted, but unfortunately the fairy type I wanted was literally taken the pick right before mine, and I was so upset when that happened. I was like, I needed that one fairy. I needed it. So, unfortunately, I had to, instead of getting my primary fairy type, I ended up going with my backup, and my backup ended up being Alolan Ninetales. Now, not gonna lie, I've used Alolan Ninetales in the past, and not saying it's a bad mon by any means, of course, being the only Pokemon to have Snow Warning and Aurora Veil, and the fact that I have so many potential setup mons, Swords Dance Garchomp, Double Dance Thundry T, and Necrozma. Aurora Veil just looks like it makes a lot of sense on a team that has so much setup potential on this draft so far. And on top of that, Ice and Fairy, very nice. Only just need to deal with those pesky Steel types. Do have Garchomp to check most of them. But on top of that, there's really not much to say about Alolan Ninetales, just being a very, very solid fairy type. The ice typing is also nice for spamming blizzards and all that stuff. And yeah, so nothing, like I said, nothing much else to say about Ninetales, only in terms of the fact that having the potential for Aurora Veil is very, very nice for this particular team, which I'll get into, which will make sense as the rest of the picks are shown here. So heading into round number 6, the next thing I wanted to do was try to get a psychic check, and I would like at the very least to also get a poison type and one. So I went with pretty much the most reliable dark type, or one of the most common dark type I've used so far, and that would be Drapion. So maybe a little bit early to get round 6 Drapion, but all the other dark types that were available didn't really appeal to me. There was a potential of Alolan Muck, but Alolan Muck was already gone. I could have waited a little bit longer for maybe something like Skuntank, but at the same time, I wanted to have... Drapion does give my team a lot of potential in terms of being a Toxic Spike user, a knockoff user. He also has the potential to be on Swords Dance, Choice Scarf, Choice Band if I'm really feeling that the matchup is good enough for Band to be effective. But yeah, another versatile mon here also gets access to stuff like Whirlwind to phase my opponent's setup sweepers out, gets access to Taunt, all that sort of thing. So a very good utility mon all in one. Only weakness being ground. I know I have to fix the ground weakness that's starting to show up a bit in this draft, but you'll see what happens as we go along. So moving on from Drapion, my round 7 pick, I wanted to get a fighting type. I wanted something to complement. I want something else that can benefit from the Stealth Rock and the Spike support wearing down my opponent's team. And I'm finally getting to use this Pokemon for the first time in Draft League format. Round 7, picking up Terrakion. Normally when it comes to fighting types, I usually am not really good at getting a good fighting type, much less keeping it on my team. This time, though, I do plan on keeping my Terrakion. I was either going Terrakion or going after potentially Buzzwole with my with this pick, and I ended up going with Terrakion here just because of the speed factor. Although Buzzwole would have worked too because Buzzwole is a ground resist. I also could have went Heracross, but Terrakion gives me a nice speed tier. Well, mostly for 108 being a very good Scarfer. I can run Choice Band, Swords Dance, Rock Polish. So yeah, the setup option, another potential setup mon to go with Aurora Veil, so that's also a very nice thing to have in the back. Appreciates the Stealth Rock and Spike support, as I mentioned. And its weaknesses for the most part are covered. The fairy types covered by Ferrothorn, the water check by Ferrothorn, although I have to double up on that in my next few picks, which, spoiler alert, I don't. So yeah, nothing much else to say about Terrakion. It's a very solid mon overall, kind of limited in its move coverage, but overall it's still a very, very solid mon in general, mainly overlooked in some instances, because usually you'll never see Terrakion drafted at some times, but getting the opportunity to try it out for myself on this team just looks like a very, very fun, looks like a fun time for me, not gonna lie. So now we move on to my last 3 picks. I see I only ended up picking up 10 Mons. And my round 8 pick ended up being another one of my favorite Pokemon, and one of the more underrated Pokemon, in my opinion, in the Draft League format. And you've seen me use it quite a bit in the past, and that Pokemon is none other than good old Major, the Piloswine. So, yeah, having one ground type weak to ice, having that second ground type, having a ground type not weak to ice is just very, very cool, no pun intended. And just forcing my opponent to pick either Hidden Power Ice for Garchomp or running grass coverage for Piloswine is just great. It also gives me my 4th Stealth Rocker, and more importantly, it does give my team some useful priorities, because I don't really have priority on this team barring Quick Attack, Terrakion, and a long shot being Ice Shard on my Ninetales. But other than that, just having the ability to have another rocker, just have another solid electric check in general. But I really just couldn't pass up Piloswine. I was really debating these last picks, because I wanted to go Piloswine at the same time. I wanted to try out Gastrodon, because as you see so far, my team has no water type. So I was kind of on the fence in terms of which option I wanted to go. I went with Piloswine only because of the fact that the Piloswine option was cheaper than going Gastrodon. Piloswine was 6 points, Gastrodon was like 8, if I recall correctly. And I wanted to save my try to save up points for my last 2 picks here. So yeah, nothing much else to say about Piloswine. It's kind of one-dimensional in terms of its moveset and its item, but at the same time, if EV'd correctly, Piloswine can put in a tremendous amount of work for any team given the right circumstance. So, moving on to my last 2 picks here, my round 9 pick ended up being Chandelure, another Pokemon in which I've never used before. I've used Blacephalon, but of course Chandelure being cheaper Blacephalon, but all in all, Chandelure gives my team a nice fire ghost typing. I guess you can call it like a spin blocker, an ice check in a sense, a normal check. Like, it's not really hard switching it on anything, but the main thing to know with Chandelure is it has the ability to be a choice scarf user, Calm Mind. It does get access to stuff like Memento, so I can use it as a potential for setup for any of my other Pokemon on my team, so I'm not so reliant on Aurora Veil to be the main way of letting my Pokemon set up. And just having a base 145 special attack stat is just great. And Chandelure complements my team very, very well, because mainly the fact that the stuff that beats Chandelure are mainly dark type, are mainly either Pokemon that has high special bulk that can take hits from Chandelure, bulky normal types, mainly stuff like Snorlax, or dark types that resist fire, or dark types that can outspeed Chandelure can also pressure it. The nice thing about it is the fact that I have something that can deal with said dark types and normal types, being my Terrakion. So that works out very well. Chandelure also benefits from the Stealth Rock and Spike support, and then again, who doesn't? But then again, not much else to say in that regard. Just a very hard-hitting special attacker, something that my team didn't really need, but having just something that just clicks a move and just goes on from there is just very, very nice. Even though I have Thundurus, but that's a different story. So, so moving on with my last pick, as you can see, I have no Mega, and the one thing my team didn't lack so far was I didn't really have anything faster. My fastest Pokemon was Alolan Ninetales at 109, so I didn't have anything faster than 110, which, in my opinion, it's a must-have to have something faster than base 110 speed. So the Mega I went with in mind had to eclipse that 110 threshold in terms of speed factor, and the only Pokemon I really felt comfortable that was available that fit said speed tier of being faster than 110 would be Mega Pidgeot. This was a Mega I actually wanted to try out for the longest time, because it's one of those megas that no one really thinks about. Well, some people do, like, of course, who wouldn't love to spam no guard hurricanes? Like, who wouldn't want to click hurricane and not have to worry about missing when you need it to hit? So having that flying spam with Mega Pidgeot plus Thundurus is very, very cool. I do have momentum with U-turn. Heat Wave for Steel types. Can also do some stuff like Defog. Can U-turn, Tailwind. It's a very straightforward mon. It also gets access to stuff like Workup if I need to just have a little bit more oomph with Mega Pidgeot's Hurricane. But just having a no drawback flying move at my disposal, and if my opponent doesn't really have a good way of checking Mega Pidgeot or my flying in general, just like have their flying resist is just like not the best, then Mega Pidgeot can just do a tremendous amount of work in that situation. So yeah, before I end the recap here, each team does gets the option to pick 2 Pokemon as their Z move, 1 Pokemon being able to use any Z status move, of course Omni boosting, evasion boosting are banned. So my status Z move user is Garchomp, and my attacking Z move user had to be at least 9 points or fewer, and I only had 2 Pokemon on this draft that fit that bill, which was Drapion and Piloswine, and since Z moves on Piloswine just doesn't make any sense, just leave it to just put it on Drapion. And Drapion does work as an effective Z move user like Z Aqua Tail, Z Earthquake, so it's not that bad in that retrospect. But with that all out of the way, words, I can't talk right now, but this is a bit condensed, but I didn't want to make this draft recap go on any longer than I had to. So yeah, that's my draft for Season 7 of the CPC. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I know this team does have some issues, like a potential like stealth, like a rock weakness is a problem, and this team does not have a water type. So that will all be addressed after week 1, I promise. So with that all out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching, and until the next time, this is Tone, signing out for now. Peace out.